evening. Welcome, everyone, to the February 19th San Bernardino County Planning Commission. Let's begin by rising and pledging our allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Michael's the roll noted already? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Pierce is not with us this evening. Each month we set aside time to hear from the public on an item or concern that's not on the agenda. Are there any items like that tonight? If there's not, then public comment is closed. We turn next to the consent agenda, which consists of three things: the acknowledgement of public hearing notice, the acknowledgement of certificate of posting, and the minutes of January 15th. Are there any questions, concerns? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First item on our agenda this evening is agenda item 4. It's a permit review for use permit number 1022-09. The owner applicant's Foster Poultry Farms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item, as you stated, is a review of the Foster Farms use permit as requested by the commission and some of the neighbors out at the site. Just to clarify, nothing new is being requested this evening. The agenda isn't quite clear. That is simply a review, that there's nothing requested. There's no change to the permit requested by the applicant this evening. We've provided you with some correspondence and some compliance documentation that we've been given from Foster Farms. It is our understanding that some of the neighbors have brought a consultant this evening who would like to speak to the commission, so it's our suggestion at this point that you open up to the public. Foster Farms may wish to speak as well, and we're here for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's open up the public comment beginning. I believe it's appropriate to hear from the consultant or the concerned neighbors first.
Thank you, Chairman DeVries and Commissioners. Scott Fuller. I'm representing tonight Ken Gemelli and Gemelli Vineyards and several of the neighbors in the area. And first of all, I'd like to say that the neighbors want to commend Foster Farms. Over the past year, the odors and flies have been much less a concern than in the past. And so we'd like to commend them on that for whatever they are doing to make things better. It has improved. So we are very pleased with that. I'd like to hand out something, though, too, as I start. Could this be sent around? I left some things in front of you there. What are some photos, and I'm passing around. I only have one each of these. And when our consultant speaks, he will refer to those. And I'd like to introduce someone that we've asked to help us out on this, to have him come speak and get into more detail. While we certainly appreciate and are pleased with the current conditions, we want to make sure those are maintained and that we have a way to address it if those are not maintained. And so our consultant will deal with that. Our consultant is Michael Polkaba, and he has some degrees after his name, C-I-H-R-E-A. He's a senior certified industrial hygienist with Biomax Environmental. He has degrees in biochemistry and molecular biology and aquatic biology from UC Santa Barbara. Michael is certified by the American Board of Industrial Hygiene as a CIH and previously certified by Cal EPA as a registered environmental assessor. Mr. Polkaba previously served on the Contra Costa County Hazardous Materials Commission and is an expert in exposure assessments and community worker protection, serving as an expert witness in the fields of industrial hygiene. There are several neighbors with us, and they are not going to all speak, but we would ask that you give Mr. Polkaba a significant amount of time in lieu of everyone getting up and speaking, if he can have a little bit of their time so he can give a full presentation.
Okay.
and leave time for questions and answers.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So while the speaker's coming up, I'm not opposed to extending his time to, are any of you? Okay.
No.
Is that right? Okay.
That's fine.
Sir?
Good evening. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Commissioners and Chair, for allowing us to have the time to speak about this important topic. As Scott mentioned, I'm Michael Polkabla. I'm an owner with Biomax Environmental. We're a consulting and industrial hygiene firm. And the Siniega Valley community members have asked me to come speak on their behalf relative to some technical questions relative to the Foster's Farms and some emissions associated with their production. We're going to deal with ammonia. Ammonia is a gas which is widely recognized to be emitted through a process of decomposition of urine and feces associated with turkeys, cows, horses, and so forth. It's a common decomposition type gas. However, it's important to recognize that this gas is also toxic, it's caustic, and it's flammable. It also has a vapor density of less than 1, meaning that it rises in the air. I brought some, it's very commonly used as an irritant. What I brought are what are commonly referred to as smelling salts. They produce ammonia. If you don't know what ammonia smells like,
Yeah.
get a little whiff of that. Okay, it's bothersome, and therefore if someone is passed out and they smell ammonia, they're going to want to get away from it. So it's bothersome at very low levels. And as a matter of fact, the odor thresholds published by the American Industrial Hygiene Association for ammonia list the odor threshold as less than, from a range of less than 1% of, 1 part per million, up to a higher level, depending on the individual sensitivities. But what's important about that is that the ammonia is at very low levels detectable. Okay? So in front of you, you have some images. There's one that I'm not sure if you have this in front of you. This shows the Foster's Farm plant up at the top of the valley, and then a number of residences which exist downwind, essentially, from the Foster's Farms plant. The Foster's Farms plant is really at the end, the upwind side of a valley in Siniega Road. Anita Cullinan has also shared with me some images that I think you have in front of you as well, too, with the 4 on the page, where it shows the vapors accumulating in the valley. And at the far end of the valley, where Foster's Farms is located, you can see the vapors which are quite visible. They're visible vapors. This really is just to show you that the topography, that it's a bowl, it's a valley, and that these vapors can accumulate. And it's accumulating from the upwind side and then transfers down to the residential side. Okay? So moving on, let's just say some facts. Foster Farms produces turkeys. And the more turkeys and more birds that they have, the more ammonia, resultant ammonia. And we commend Foster's Farms for their actions this year. In 2013, there's been far less odors associated and far less complaints associated with the ammonia smells. And as for why, I'd like to talk about that a little bit later and specifically ask Foster Farms to keep up that good work, and let's learn from why this is in existence. We do understand through reports that Foster Farms has approximately the same amount of birds this year versus last year. So then, therefore, are they moving manure more? Are they using other type of deodorizing technologies such as sodium bicarbonate, or are they using enzymes? Are they using acetic acid? Other widely understood ways of neutralizing odors. We'd like to find out. And we would like to also comment on the use permit. Obviously, Foster Farms exists under a currently approved use permit, July 21st, 2011. And under that use permit, it has a number of provisions. 2 very important ones. Number 1, a provision for an annual review of their operations, specifically stated in item number 3. It also has a mitigation provision under item number 16, which clearly indicates that at no time shall a level of ammonia on site exceed 35 parts per million. Now, 35 parts per million is extremely odorous. If we had 35 parts per million of ammonia in this room, we'd all want to get out. That's a very strong, pungent, similar to these smelling salts, level of ammonia. That is a worker protection standard. And in particular, it references, even in the use permit, it's a worker protection standard associated with a 15-minute average allowable limit. That was referenced with the Cal OSHA standard. That's to protect workers, and rightfully so. They have the obligation and the duty to protect their workers on site. Well, what it doesn't do, it doesn't translate to protecting community members from odorous conditions, what we call nuisance odors. And once again, nuisance odors can exist when we smell them and we're bothered by them. That's, in essence, the definition of a nuisance odor. You don't like it. You want to get away. It smells bad. And in this case, it's very recognizable as to the type of smell that ammonia has. So what I'm getting at here is that a level far less than what's allowable on site can be and is very bothersome to people who are living around it and smelling ammonia, down to as low as 1 part per million and less. Okay? So current conditions, we have much less odors in 2013 versus 2012. Wonderful. Why? You know, as we mentioned, we would like to know why, so that we can proceed and continue with, you know, this trend. We want this trend to continue and to evolve for the benefit of the community, as well as for the benefit of these operations in Foster Farms. So, what are we asking for? Well, what we're asking for is a clarification to the use permit, the existing use permit, which clarifies and includes the annual review, and as part of that annual review, an incorporation of beyond just the monitoring that Foster Farms is required to do on site, monitoring, keeping the levels below 35 parts per million, but to also clarify that the community is important and that we can provide odor records and odor logs that the community is already keeping and has been asked to do by the previous commission in order to present, such that we can monitor and maintain that the levels are low, and if something occurs such that there's a higher frequency or a higher duration or severity of the odors, that something can be looked at as to, and to ask the question why. So really it's quite simple what we're asking for. We're asking for the annual review to occur and also to incorporate this provision such that odor logs are then introduced as part of that revision. Okay? So in summary and closing, I hope what we ask is reasonable. I believe it is. We'd like to commend Foster Farms once again on their 2013 reduction in odors. We would like to preserve the quality, the air quality, the environmental quality for the community, and also encourage Foster Farms to act and to continue to act responsibly and manage these toxic, caustic, flammable gases, which are a normal process with having birds. With that, I'd like to open it up for any questions you might have.
I had one question, sir. You mentioned a nuisance odor. Is there any way of quantifying in parts per million what would equate to a nuisance odor?
Very difficult, and in my field I'm asked to do that often. What I brought with me is what I called my nerd manual, one of my nerd manuals. It's from the American Industrial Hygiene Association, and it's odor thresholds for chemicals with established occupational health standards. And it lists in here a range of, it lists all the studies that have occurred since 1968 for ammonia in particular. It's a compilation of this. And to answer your question directly, difficult to pick a number because people are so variable in their ability to detect. One person can detect ammonia at less than 1 part per million. Others have been listed in this document as they're not even going to smell ammonia until it's over 50 parts per million. So a huge range, orders of magnitude in range. So really in situations like this, when communities are impacted, we can't rely on worker protection standards. That's for the site. And that's, they understand this. They need to protect their workers, okay, on an 8-hour exposure, or in this case, the 35 parts per million is a 15-minute exposure. It's higher than the 8-hour exposure. So therefore, what we're left with is, can you smell it, and is it bothersome? It's more of a subjective issue. It's very difficult to put a number on. And so I wrestled with that to possibly propose a number to you. But then that opens the door to, well, then how do we monitor for that? But really, the buck stops here. If someone's bothered by the odor, it bothers them. They don't like the smell, and they're smelling it. And that is a nuisance in and of itself by definition. So I propose that the low-tech version, but the most effective way, is to address it from that standpoint. To keep logs, keep records, honest logs, honest records, verified duration, date, and severity on a scale of like 0 to 5 is what's typical in the industry. 0 being barely smell it, 5 being wow, tears to my eyes. And if that's the case, under these type of conditions, that there should be a mechanism to report. And that reporting mechanism, which I would encourage the residents of Senega Valley to do, would be to call either a commissioner or the air board to note with them, hey, it smells really bad here today, and give the air board the option to come out in order to look at it as well, and also for yourselves as well to go out there and see, is this really a problem or not on this day?
So let me see if I understood you then. Because of the subjective nature of the perception of the odor, coming up with any kind of objective standard above which Foster Farm would be in violation of a condition. Instead, then, we, as a commission, are looking more towards tools such as monitoring, observance, the reporting, those types of things.
Right. Even in your current use permit, you do require that Foster's Farms purchases an ammonia monitoring device, which I understand they've done, and they've monitored some of their locations within this particular facility. That data should be made available during this annual review as well, too, so that it's looked at. Where the data was collected is important. You know, was that room occupied at the time by birds, or was it just an empty room? Is that close to the ground, close to the ceiling, where somebody would walk? It's recognized that those are source locations. It's irrefutable that ammonia is produced by the composting of the manure, okay? So, you know, but really the buck stops for the worker is what they're exposed to, and they're handling that through their OSHA compliance. But once it travels past the fence line, and it travels down the valley like these pictures so eloquently showed, which can occur in an inversion layer and because of the geography and the topography here, that when it travels down the valley, are people smelling it, and is it bothersome, you know, to them?
Okay. Good. Anything else from the commission? No? Okay. Thank you, sir.
And I thank you for your time.
Is a representative of Foster Farms here? And if so, did they care to speak? If not, oh, there are? Okay, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jim Marnotti. I'm the Director of Environmental Affairs for Foster Poultry Farms. And I think it's important to reiterate a few points. We've been at this a while. We've discussed this issue over a number of different meetings. So I'd like to take just a minute to sort of backtrack and summarize some of the issues that we have done to make sure that we have the best operation possible. Foster Farms is concerned about the environment and has been since we purchased the facility. There is a creek to the south. So we went through an expensive and extensive construction project which recently concluded. We built a berm to ensure that no water, nothing that is currently on the ranch can get into that creek. Extensive enough that the Regional Water Quality Control Board exempts us from having a permit for discharges. There are no discharges. We worked very cooperatively with the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the Building Department, the Planning Department, to make sure that that was done right. Throughout the entire process, we had a team of wildlife biologists overseeing our construction activities to ensure that those activities did not adversely affect the environment or any special status species. We also have a monitoring program that we have voluntarily instituted with the water district to ensure that the groundwater is protected, that it's not being adversely affected by our operations. In terms of the odor controls, the fly controls, Foster Farms is very concerned about running a very good operation. We have been from the start. The assertion that we are now doing something differently than we have done all along is incorrect. Foster Farms was told that there are fly problems. We have hired 2 nationally renowned entomologists to come onto the site to do a thorough investigation of our property and to look for breeding areas and excessive fly populations. Nothing was found, not in either case. This is not something that we can affect. It either is, there is fly breeding or there is not. We've made every effort to voluntarily police ourselves. This was not something that was mandated by the planning department. Foster Farms has maintained its property. We fixed the roofs. It was mentioned that the composting of litter with the manure can off-gas ammonia. Very true. You have to keep the litter dry. We fixed the roofs. We maintain the sprinklers, the drinkers, to make sure that no excess moisture gets into the litter, thereby minimizing the ammonia off-gassing. We've done this all along. Foster Farms has worked involuntarily. In fact, we invited the Monterey Bay Air Quality Management District to come into the site, look it over. These are experts in odor and nuisance issues. They found nothing. They smelled no objectionable odors. They even wrote a letter to that effect. The previous owner, Nicholas, came onto the site twice and said that basically no fly breeding issues, bird health was exceptional, no burning of the feet, no excess ammonia, which can affect bird health, both the quality of their feed and the growth rates. Nothing was found that was adverse to the bird or the environment, and they felt that we were maintaining and running the operation better than they did. We have this in writing from them. We did do an in-house monitoring study with a handheld ammonia concentration monitor. This is the same type that was bought by us for the county, the planning department. We have measured the ammonia concentrations at different parts of the house, close to the litter, which is the source, in the winter, which is worst case, highest moisture. And we typically found between 0 and 1 part per million. The average over the entire approximately 6-month monitoring cycle was about 4 parts per million, nothing close to the permit limit of 35. In addition, the best management practice is trying to find objective measures for gauging the quality of our operations. We have not only met every one that has been recommended, but we exceed them. We did research on our own to guarantee that we were exhausting every possibility. There are enzymatic products that you can spray on the litter that bind and prevent the off-gassing of ammonia. We currently employ those. We have for years, not just starting in 2013. We have removed poultry litter, poultry bedding with manure from the ranch at the same frequency from the time we've owned it to the time currently. We have made sure that we don't bury or compost or land apply any objectionable material, any odorous material. What we do is, if we have mortality on the ranch, which we are going to have, we have it hauled off by Salinas Rendering and rendered. They make beneficial byproducts, further use of that material. We have not changed the number of birds or the operational practices on that site since we've owned it. We have not. We are not trying to reduce odors. We have always tried to, we're not trying something new. We have always reduced odors. We have always run a clean ship. We've had dozens of inspections on that site without one single negative review, ever. Not from your code enforcement officer, not from the fire marshal, not from the water district, not from anybody, the air district, your county planning folks. Nobody has ever said one negative thing about our site. And they've been in the houses, they've been through the entire property. So what we're dealing with here what we, as a company, deal with is objective measures, not subjective measures. There's never been a study to determine whether there are any other potential odor sources down the entire long valley, which is several miles. We have been assumed to be the source of the odor. Now that things are good, we are not being, they're saying keep up the good work. We've kept it up all along. We've changed nothing. So my recommendation, because there is already recourse for the folks out there, if they smell objectionable odors, they do notify you. If they want to keep an odor log, which was your suggestion, they have that opportunity to do that already. If you want to review the permit, we welcome it. You want to review our operational practices, please do. We are absolutely open to it, but we are doing nothing differently. We are a good company, we have been from the start, and we are running that as well as it can be run and doing things that virtually nobody else in the industry does. So just in closing, we wanted to reiterate some of the things that we've been doing, make you aware that we are running as good an operation as can be run, and have that on the record.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
But are you doing anything differently? No, that was just a joke. Any questions from the commission? No? No? Okay. Anyone else from the public care to speak on this agenda item? If not, public comments closed. To the commission, it was suggested that an annual review take place, Byron. That's my understanding. That's already a condition of the approval. Condition number 3, I think it was stated. So it's not, that wouldn't be nothing new, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Another suggestion that I heard, I don't know if anyone else did, was that the data from the Foster Farms monitoring devices be shared at the time of the annual review. Do you have any thoughts on that?
We can request that they provide those items to us as part of the review, as well as request that the property owners provide any kind of odor logs that they have to present at the annual review.
I think that would be helpful for staff. I mean, it was represented that the average parts per million ammonia reading that they obtained was 4 parts per million, and if that was something that you could look at and then compare with the odor logs of the community, that might be helpful information. Any other questions for staff? So, before we entertain those, so for our purposes this evening, this is just a check-in on how are things going. So there's no action to be taken.
There's no action to be taken unless you direct any action to, unless you want us to look at any actions to be taken, but it doesn't sound like any of the items that are suggested would necessitate any change to the use permit.
Okay. Anything further? Commissioner Lowe?
Mr. Chair, the only thing I want on the record for total transparency is I did have a conversation with Mr. Cullinan, but everything that we discussed was brought up tonight.
Okay. All right, very good. Anything?
Yeah, and last year I walked the whole facilities. At the time, there was no smell. And I've also told some residents if there's a smell there to call me, and I'll be more than happy to go out there and look at it or smell it.
Okay, good. Commissioner Culler, anything to add? All right. So then if there's no further action items, I think that handles that agenda item. Thank you all, Cienega Valley folks. Hope things continue to go well. I'm sure you'll let us know if they don't. Thank you, Foster Farms, for the good work. Thank you, Mr. Air Expert guy with all the degrees. Okay, turning to the next agenda item. It's agenda item number 5. This is a zone change, ZC 13-177. The owner applicant is the Community Housing Improvement Systems and Planning Association, CHISPA. Just
one moment, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Michael Kelly, Associate Planner, and I'm here to talk about this project, Zone Change 13-177, the proposed rezoning of 890 Buena Vista Road, 5-acre property at Buena Vista Road and Lion Street, to 5 acres to be rezoned, if you choose, to from AP agricultural productive to RM residential multiple. And also proposed by the project is 80 apartments that would be in multiple two-story buildings. They would all be for 80% of area median income households that are at or below that income level. That is also called very low or low income. This project would qualify as such for by proposing that level of affordable housing. It would qualify for density bonuses at the state level and locally too, because we have that worked into our ordinance. And so let me just open this here. And also proposed are various related things like a residence center and laundry facility, parking, solar facilities to generate energy for the project, 152 parking spaces, grading, 3,000 cubic yards of cut and fill to level the site and prepare it for the buildings and for the parking, and utilities also. Here on the screen is, and it's kind of dim, but maybe we can turn light. That kind of helps, I guess. This is the site. That's the same picture that's in the staff report and in the initial study. That right. Buena Vista Road. Here are the 5 acres right there. Here's a cemetery. This is the view from Park Hill, and Buena Vista Road turns into Locust Street down here. Here are other apartments. Here are single-family houses, and here are Salvation Army property here, and other residences and farmland over here. And these are some elevations of how the residences as proposed would look, potentially. 2 stories, as you see. And to move on, this is site plan for, well, here's Buena Vista Road, and here's drive, internal drive here, and parking in all of that area, and here we have buildings on the site over here, and all through here, and a residence center and shared facilities there, as labeled a park area here, and over some of the parking, solar panels. Just a close-up of the west side of the development and the east side, just so you can view it more easily. So that is what is proposed, and I'll say that you can turn that back on now. Thank you. The initial study goes into a lot more detail. That was circulated over about the past month. Went to the state and went to, in turn, went to various agencies, regional and state agencies, and also went to agencies around here and went to neighbors within 300 feet, and have not received any written comment on this project. I received 1 phone call concerned about transportation, and that was pretty much it up to this point for public comment and agency comment in general on this. The initial study found no particular significant impact from this project, other than a few items that are considered to be, could be mitigated, and the proposed mitigations are worked into this as conditions of approval proposed. And as I said, I described in the analysis in the staff report how this fits in with the general plan policies. Mentioned the housing element, how we encourage affordable housing in the housing element by different means, such as I said in the staff report, policy 1B, ensure that housing is affordable to extremely low, very low, low, and moderate income families and members of the local workforce. Policy 1F, county shall promote a fair share of well-designed, affordable, and varied housing. And also, we had a rezone program in the housing element, which of course we adopted in 2010, to rezone a certain amount of land to the RM zone that would kind of by design serve the lower income households of the county. And so I will say that staff recommends, as stated in the staff report, that the commission make the CEQA findings that are shown in the resolution, the draft resolution attached to your staff reports, and that the commission approve the resolution and make the findings in there, recommending that the board adopt the mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and recommending that the board approve the zone change, subject to the conditions of approval, and direct us staff to forward all of this to the board for their consideration. A couple of things, a couple of changes. I hate to make changes, but these are kind of smaller changes. Condition 23, staff would like to recommend that, as opposed to what you saw in the staff report, that the condition be changed to this, as shown on the screen, which, let me turn this off. It's a slight rewording as recommended by our LAFCO officer regarding water and sewer service to this property. Of course, this property is proposing water and sewer service, but it's outside the City of Hollister, the provider. But it is within the City of Hollister's sphere of influence and the City of Hollister's urban area. So there are some formalities to go through to have the applicant, as it says here, applicant obtain approval for out-of-agency service agreements. And that is a condition of approval. Before any of this can be approved for building, this water and sewer service has to be made available by the City of Hollister. And the other change is I changed the graphic in the draft ordinance just so that it would be easier to print, as Barbara recommended, easier to print and read in the newspaper should it be approved. And it would need to be printed in the newspaper. So this is, hopefully this graphic looks good, pointing directly to the site more clearly than the previous graphic did. So that's that. As I said, staff recommends, as I said before, recommends that you approve the resolution or adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael? Commissioner Love.
If this project would be developed in the City of Hollister, would the
Yes.
density be the same, do you know?
I talked with the City of Hollister, and they have their pre-zoning for the site, and this meets their rules for the density. In part, it actually is, their rules do actually require a lower density than this, with the exception of the fact that it's affordable housing, lower income, so they get a density bonus. And so they can have something like 81 units, I think, under the density bonus. And so it's 80 units, so it fits.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Michael, I had a question quickly. So if this is an application for a zone change by CHISPA,
Yeah.
a zone change is a zone change. The reason why you got into all the detail regarding what was going to be done on the zone change is because that's required to do the zone change in the first instance?
Well, because I did the CEQA analysis on the entirety of the project, including the construction that would happen as a result, potentially.
So because the resolution and the adoption and so forth isn't project specific, is it? It just pertains to the rezoning of this ground.
Well, technically, yeah, and that's why the conditions are there, so that should a project such as what's proposed be built on the property under this rezoning, that'd be subject to those conditions.
Any project, not the one, so you have to say it a different way. If what is actually built is not that which you showed tonight, but it was still consistent with the zone change, then that could be done? Sorry. Sorry about that. So,
That's my job, to keep an eye on the microphone. Sorry
yeah,
about
well,
that.
you're busy. So once the zoning is changed, can CHISPA build any project, or does it have to be the one that was presented tonight?
Well, technically, I guess that's a CEQA, that could be a CEQA question, because I tried in the CEQA document, I might just ask you about that. I tried in the CEQA document to describe this project, but also describe the possibility of what could be built in this. And this is actually pretty almost maximal, not quite maximal development, 16 dwelling units per acre, and RM zone allows for 20 dwelling units per acre or more under affordable housing density bonus. But it is pretty maximal as to, close to maximal as to what could be built on this property. So I would suppose that by reviewing the project as I did, it would, what the CEQA I did would apply to other development that could be possible.
I mean, you are approving the zone change, so somebody could bring forth, I believe, just off the top of my head, I believe that they could bring forth a different project under the new zoning, because you are changing the zone change.
I guess that's what I'm getting at. And if they do bring a new let's call it a different project into building and planning for approval, that doesn't need planning commission approval if it's consistent with the zoning once
If it's consistent with
changed.
the zoning, it would just be a ministerial action.
Administrative review. Okay.
It would jeopardize the CEQA document that was used to do the zone change, because the CEQA document references this project.
This particular project. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I
Thank you.
suppose an
That was
amendment
just
might
like
be
for my own
necessary.
education. Pardon me?
Well, I suppose a supplement or an amendment to the initial study could be needed if the project is pretty significantly different, but I would suppose.
Okay. Thank you. If there are no other questions for staff, let's open it up for public comment. I don't see any takers. Oh, sir?
Woodall?
Good evening. My name is Alan Woodall. I'm a local business owner on Buena Vista and also a landowner on Buena Vista. I own 10 acres, a few hundred yards down from this proposed. I do not have a problem with what they're going to do, because I actually plan on doing that in the future also, of developing my 10 acres as the same as they're doing. I have read the traffic report that they came up with, and I disagree with some of the findings. Buena Vista Road is one of 3 westerly exit roads from Hollister to get to the highway, 156. Buena Vista Road is 2.5 miles long with 0 stop signs on it. Starting at 5 o'clock in the morning throughout the day, the Buena Vista Road turns into an on-ramp for Highway 156. My family can't sleep in the front bedroom of their house because of the traffic coming off of West Side heading out toward 156. It's my opinion that a couple of 4-way stop signs need to be put in on Buena Vista before we start continuing developing these areas of the sphere of influence for the Buena Vista area. The intersection of West Side and Buena Vista needs a 4-way stop sign, and Miller Road and Buena Vista needs a four-way stop sign. What it's going to do is it's going to slow down the traffic flow for the traffic heading out of town, because you have 2.5 miles of roadway and people are leaving. The road is a school zone 25 and also a 30 during the day. I've lived there for a long time, and I've made numerous complaints to the city and to the Sheriff's Department and the Highway Patrol constantly about the speeding and the racing going up and down that road. Hollister needs to work on traffic control on Buena Vista before we're going to start adding all these developments and new traffic going in and out of there. And also, one last issue is we have Calaveras School right there. Calaveras School does not have any turn lanes to get into their parking lot for their parents to do pickup for the children during the day. So between the hours of 7:30 and 8:30, it's a traffic gridlock. Because once the parking lot fills up with cars for parents, the rest of the parents will park on Buena Vista in the middle of the street for 10 to 15 minutes before the cars can rotate through the parking lot, which creates people coming onto the head-on traffic to go around and to go onto the shoulder. And this happens twice a day for about an hour. So we need to work on the Buena Vista Road to control some of the traffic for all this future development. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, did you want to comment on any of that, or no? Pardon me? Yeah, sir, we happen to have the Director of Public Works here who's in charge of stop signs and turn lanes and so forth, so let's see what he has to say on the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Essentially, he's right in many concerns on West Side Boulevard. There are, smelling salt here, there are many improvements planned for West Side Boulevard. The extension of North Street, for example, which is a city project, will improve Buena Vista to the intersection of West Side Boulevard at its last inception. And in that site, the last plan that I actually did see, it's been a little bit since I've seen it, though, over a year since I've seen it, it did include the installation of traffic control devices at West Side and Buena Vista.
Okay.
That is Buena Vista, for the audience, and I'm sure he understands as well, it's problematic because the city limit line goes and jogs back and forth along Buena Vista. Part of it's in the county, part of it's in the city, and therefore it requires communication and combination of different planning departments and different engineering departments to work through that issue. By MOU, the CHP is responsible for traffic control on Buena Vista, so that's where the speed issues have to go through is through the CHP, which makes that even more difficult because they are limited services and they're coming out of Gilroy to patrol that area. There are projects underway to try to address some of the issues with the school, with the COG offices are working with a grant writer to try to alleviate some of the issues with school drop-offs for Calaveras and for our Hardin. Actually, there's a couple of grants under process to try to alleviate some of those situations. I actually, on a personal note, my child goes to that school, and although I don't see the people stopping in the street, I don't doubt that they have done it on occasion. It's just that situation that happens at most grade schools throughout the city of Hollister. It's not an uncommon problem. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen there. I just don't see it on the central side. So in short, I think that there are difficulties out there. I think that there are projects in the pipeline that will address some of those concerns for the traffic on Buena Vista, and I think that it's a stepwise process. When the warrants are met for stop signs, for example, that's when they'll put in. We can't put them in ahead of that aspect of it. So if one at the intersection of Miller and Buena Vista is warranted, it will be installed. We can't do preventative ones ahead of that with the assumption that there will be a problem in the future. That's not the way that we can actually operate a traffic system. So when they are warranted, we will install them. We just can't do them ahead of time. And then just as a note, generally speaking, for the public, and it falls on deaf ears quite often, is stop signs do not constitute speed slowing instruments. People essentially speed up in between the stop signs to make it for the lost time. So the installation of stop signs by themselves do not slow traffic down. They certainly make intersections safer, but the areas between those stop signs, sometimes the individuals who are traveling there try to make up their travel time and go faster there. So there's a lot of documented history that indicates that stop signs by themselves do not slow traffic down.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Long.
Steve, on the stop signs, like at Miller Road, is that city or county?
Both, I believe. I believe the center line at that portion of west side of Buena Vista is the city limit line. The T part of Miller itself is a city street. The houses that are on either side of Miller, the entrance there, are within the city. I believe the city limit line falls within about the middle of Buena Vista at that point.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jeff? No. Thank you very much, Steve. So it sounds like good news, sir. Some of your concerns are already being addressed. Let's hope for good things. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gabriel Torres. I'm Project Manager for CHISPA. I'm here this evening to, again, thank the Commission for reviewing this project, and also to thank staff for the diligent work they've been doing on preparing this to come before you this evening. This evening, I do have our architect in the audience to answer any questions you may have in regards to the development, and our President and CEO, Alfred Diaz-Infante, and our Director of Real Estate Development, Dana Cleary, here this evening. CHISPA is an organization very excited about this opportunity to do the first affordable housing development in the county. We've worked very diligently with the city of Hollister doing housing rehabilitation programs, and are very excited about this opportunity to do this development. And again, we'll comply with the mitigation measures that are presented to us by the county. Again, we're here to answer any questions that you have for us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here, and thank you also to your team for taking time to be here as well. We appreciate that. Any questions for CHISPA? No? I just want to commend the designers on a job well done. I don't know about the rest of the commission, but I think it looks great. It looks very nice. It doesn't look like low income or affordable. It looks really, really beautiful. So nicely done. Any other comments from the public? Ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Lori Woodall. I'm at 1070 Buena Vista Road, just down the street from the proposed project, and I think it's a fine project. I am not here to oppose the project in its entirety. I have a problem with the traffic report, and Mr. Kelly did provide me with that traffic report, and I, being a layperson, suffered through it and did the best I could to read the various sections of it. And while I appreciate the Director of Public Works comments about the future, in the traffic report, the future is 2035. That's 21 years from now, when if I read this correctly, and I could be wrong, but it states that at the end of my time, because I'll be 71 years old, they will be stabilization of this intersection is needed in order to maintain acceptable traffic operations. Speaking of West Side and Buena Vista Road, that is the nearest intersection to my home, and it's a racetrack. Buena Vista Road is a racetrack. That's not your concern. That's the Highway Patrol, and they really, I call them all the time, but they don't come out. So that's completely a separate issue. However, the report to me is misleading because I live there and I witness it every single day. I don't know what day the report was prepared. It does actually say draft on the very front of the report. It's not signed, so I don't know. I assume it's the final report. I don't know what day they went out there and did their study between 7 and 9 in the morning and between 4 and 6 in the afternoon. I wonder if it was a day when school was in session, because if school was in session between 7 and 9 in the morning, they would see traffic. According to the report that was prepared by the Building and Planning, the Notice of Proposed Mitigation Negative Declaration, there's going to be approximately 608 trips daily added to the area. That's really only one intersection that can handle any amount of traffic. The Locust Street access to Buena Vista Road is about as wide as this podium. If anybody's driven it, it's very narrow. I use it all the time, but I only use it in one direction because the other direction is a little more precarious coming around. Cars are parked. I don't see people living on Buena Vista Road that are new to Buena Vista Road using Locust Street. They're going to use Line or they're going to use West Side to get to 4th Street. 4th Street, if you head out of town, has 3 lights, one at West Side, one at Miller, and one at Graff before you cross the bridge. Buena Vista has nothing until you get to 156. So access point to this property, this project is really and truly going to be the Buena Vista and West Side Boulevard intersection. And I believe that some sort of traffic measure of control needs to be implemented there, not 21 years from now, but within a reasonable amount of time. I know this project isn't going to be built in 2014, maybe not even in 2015, but I think along the lines of the time that it is nearing completion and nearing occupancy, which I look forward to. I think it's a great project for that area, and I'm all for it. I do think that by the time the project is nearing completion and occupancy, that intersection needs to be considered for traffic. You know, the rest of the street, it's not your problem at this time, but, you know, I'm working with CHP on a regular basis. You know, hello, come out, and they don't. So good to know there's an MOU in place, because I'll be getting a copy of that as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lori. Steve, you're not going to, what I understand from your comments previously is you're not going to wait till 2035 if a need arises prior, correct?
That's correct. Basically, if the intersection meets warrants for a stop sign, the stop sign will go in sooner than that. So whenever the intersection meets what's called traffic warrants, when the number of vehicles, number of trips, number of turns, basically delay through that intersection occurs, makes the need for a traffic stop to be installed, that's when it'll be installed. It won't wait until 2035 at a magic date and all of a sudden go in. It just, when it's necessary.
When the need arises, it'll be met. Okay,
Correct.
good. Any other member of the public care to speak on this agenda item? If not, public comment is closed to the commission. Further questions, discussion? If not, is there a proposed motion using the staff's recommended language and being mindful of the fact that staff has also suggested that we replace condition 23 with that which was shown on the screen? That should be incorporated into the motion.
Mr. Chair?
And also the change to exhibit to
and
the ordinance.
That's right, and that the graphic in the ordinance has been changed. Yes, Commissioner Lowe.
I don't know if the Planning Commission's ever done this before, or if we can even do it. But after the testimony we heard tonight, could the chair of the Planning Commission send a letter to the Highway Patrol and just say that, you know, these concerns were brought up at a meeting, and we were wondering if they could send some patrol to that area?
Would that be appropriate?
I mean, I don't see a reason why you couldn't if you decided to.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that you could do that.
I think it would maybe serve to
We could,
assist the residents, Lori and others, that we are mindful of the issue and have heard from the residents, and not
a
a bad
letter
idea.
could come back for the Planning Commission's approval at the next meeting.
Pardon me?
Either the chair, the Planning Commission could delegate that to the chair to send, or it could come back, whichever the commission would prefer.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we, well, first of all, there's been a suggestion by Commissioner Lowe to prepare a letter like that to go to the Highway Patrol. Is there?
I'm for it.
Yeah? You're in favor of that too? Okay. I think it's a good idea as well. So why don't we do this? Why don't we, County Council and the Planning Director prepare a draft and put it on the consent agenda for our next meeting? If it looks okay, we'll approve it along with consent. I'll sign it and it can go off. How's that?
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Then back to the, if there's no further questions or deliberations, then we need a proposed motion. Again, replacing condition 23 and also noting the change in the graphic in the draft ordinance. Is there such a motion?
I make the motion to approve the way the
It's on page 2 of 12, if you want to read it.
12. Read the whole staff recommendations.
Right here,
The approve made on the CEQA findings and set forth in the attachment Planning Commission resolutions 2014-02. That's all of them, all three. And approve Planning Commission resolutions 2014-02 and the findings therein recommending the Board of Supervisors adopt the mitigation negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program and approve zone change 13-177, subject to the findings and other following conditions of approval, and direct staff to forward the mitigation negative declarations, mitigation monitoring and reporting program, the zone change petition, project application, and the complete administrative records to the Board of Supervisors for consideration.
And that motion includes the amended change to amend the change to condition of approval number 23 and the change to the map attached to the ordinance.
Yeah.
As presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Good luck. And Lori, if you want to see a copy of that letter that we're going to send to the Highway Patrol without having to come to the next Planning Commission meeting, as thrilling as I know these are, maybe you can just get it emailed to you from Byron or Barbara.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Must not be fun living on a racetrack. Good luck with that. Okay, next agenda item, which is 6, I believe. This is tentative subdivision map 13-89. The owner applicant is Santana Ranch Property Owners Group.
Let's not switch the indemnification.
Wait a second, now is that in here
No,
already?
it
So
should
sure
be
they
in
do
there.
have it.
No, she probably doesn't know that it should be in there.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so,
Can I keep that?
yeah, that's from the other project.
I don't need to do
Yeah,
that.
you just can read that one in,
Okay, good.
but don't change the indemnification because that just gets more confusing.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Michael Krause, Associate Planner, presenting tentative subdivision map 13-89 Santana Ranch. The project proposes to develop the final 92 units in the Santana Ranch specific plan, small lot residential component, which is Phase 3 of the project. The application proposed is to make minor, the application proposes to make minor modifications to what was proposed in the specific plan, to some commercial components, the community park, and the school site. A project-level final environmental impact report was prepared, circulated, and certified as adequate by the Board of Supervisors on October 5th, 2010 for the proposed project. Mitigation measures were developed in that final EIR and agreed to by the project applicant. Those mitigation measures are incorporated into the proposed conditions for this tentative map application. The proposed tentative subdivision map is consistent with both county general plan and approved Santana Ranch specific plan. The regulations as set forth in the zoning and subdivision ordinances that are applicable to the property, as set forth in the county code and development agreement with the property owners. Now, before I give the recommendation, I do want to make a change to the conditions of approval. I would like to add the following. Prior to or upon approval by the Planning Commission, the applicant shall sign the statement below, which is a signature statement, certifying that the applicant is in agreement with the conditions of approval. And it reads, I certify that I understand and agree to comply with all conditions of approval imposed by the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors as applicable on this permit. And I would also like to make one other change, the applicant, to a condition that the applicant requested. And that is condition number 11, utilities. I would like to strike the words prior to recording the final map from that condition. So utilities to be installed and accepted by the utility company, and striking prior to recording the final map. So,
Say that again, Michael.
sure, absolutely.
Condition 11A, utility plans, right?
It's condition 11. It is B.
Is it in both A and B?
I mean, the phrase prior to the recordation of the...
It's acceptance of utilities in B.
But I think county council's point is that language is also in A. Do you want it stricken from both?
I do want it stricken from both. I'm looking for it in A.
First sentence.
First sentence, oh, okay, there it is, yes, yes. So I would like it stricken from both.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be the applicant's request.
So it would then read, as part of, well, how does that sentence then read?
If we're looking at A, let's have it actually,
As part of submission of improvement plans for this project, comma, the applicant shall?
yes, we're going to go with that. As part of submission of improvement plans for the project, the applicant shall include utility plans and obtain approval by each corresponding utility company when applicable, and so on.
And then on B, acceptance of utilities, that sentence should read, the applicant shall install or bond, striking prior to recordation, which
Correct,
precedes it? Okay.
correct.
Okay.
And the inclusion of the signature block for accepting the conditions of approval as well.
Right, okay.
Okay. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve TSM 13-89 based on the required findings and subject to conditions of approval contained in the staff report. And Public Works staff and planning staff are available for questions.
Michael, what does the signature of the applicant evidences their acceptance of the conditions of approval? Is that?
Yes, that's a standard condition of approval that we've added since this project probably first came before the Planning Commission, but
Right.
if you notice, it's on a lot of the other agenda items where
I know
yeah.
exactly what you're talking about, but
It just indicates
you
that they-
rattled that off pretty quickly, so it just indicates, what were you going to say, Barbara, that the owner, or the applicant rather, accepts the conditions of approval as imposed by the county?
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
Correct. As imposed by the Planning Commission.
Okay, right.
Yes. It's similar, it's going to be the exact same language as set forth in agenda item number 7, the condition of approval number 3. It just indicates agreement with all conditions of approval.
Right, there it is. Okay. Any questions for staff from the commission? Are there any members of the public? Frank, Brian, do you want to say anything on this?
Good evening. I'm Brian Curtis with Stone Creek Properties. I'd like to thank Michael and the staff for all the work they've done, reviewing and processing this application. I'm in agreement with the changes they just now mentioned, and I'd be glad to answer any other questions that the commission may have.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Lowe?
Yes, I'd like the record to show that I did talk with Mr. Curtis yesterday, and I'll ask the same question I asked yesterday. I'm concerned about the parcel where the school is because
Okay.
of the traffic, and I think, Brian, you explained it to me yesterday, but I'd like it on the record and have a little more discussion on
I
it.
have a map that I could show you.
Okay, well, I have the map here, I think.
No, I mean, I have a different map. I mean, a new map.
Okay. Maybe it's a better map. Maybe I'll like it better.
Well, it just shows we're limited to where the school can go, and so this kind of shows what flexibility we have. So the school has a requirement that they have to be at least 1,500 feet set back from gas mains. And we have a gas main, actually two mains in our lineal park, and so the 1,500-foot setback prevents the majority of our site from being usable as a school. So there's really only two spots. Just the lower right-hand corner is really the only place the school could fit. And we've looked at the circulation, you know, as you heard earlier on other items, you know, traffic to the school is a key issue, and our goal is to be able to design it so that traffic is not a problem for that site. And our feeling is just having it north of Sunny Slope Road allows better circulation for the school. Our goal would be to have it's up to the school to design their site, but our preference is to have the heavy traffic, which is the student parking lot, be located on Santana Ranch Drive, which is a collector street with no driveways and no house fronts on that street. So if there was traffic to back up, which we'd prefer not to happen, that would be the best street to have congestion, so to speak, because there's no front yards and driveways on that road. So our feeling is having the school north of Sunny Slope is the best location of our site to have the school.
On the parcel itself, that will be large, and well, but then you're not developing the school. It'll be up to the school to develop.
How large is that? Our development agreement requires us to reserve 12 acres for the school, and they have, I think, until 2018 to decide if they want to purchase it or not. And I think they've said, you know, we got to have so many kids in the development before it's ideal for school to start. So we need to get a couple hundred homes going before there's enough students there to use the school, unless they bring in students from other areas. But they want somewhat of a head start with the students.
So what do you think about that site for the school after hearing that?
Well, I do believe that the developer is pretty limited on what they can do.
Looks like it, yeah.
My concern obviously is just the traffic, and that's a busy intersection right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my concern too. And then seeing this little map, they're just going to be on Santana Drive instead of Sunny Slope.
Yeah, they may have a faculty parking lot on Sunny Slope, but the student, and then they want to have two parking lots. Their guideline was have access on two roads for two parking lots. And I think they're going to have the faculty parking lot on Sunny Slope and the student parking lot on Santana Ranch Drive.
The only entrance will actually be off of Santana Drive, or will there actually be one off of Sunny Slope?
There'll be another driveway and parking lot on on Sunny Slope for the faculty parking lot.
And I'd just like to add that at this point, it's not known what the design of the school will be. The school district is obviously in charge of that. And I also wanted to add, just draw your attention to condition of approval number 32, which speaks to traffic. G, the school site, commercial component, community park, and other recreational areas. And I'll read it into the record if you'd like. Due to the present uncertainty of the ultimate locations of the school site, commercial component, community park, and other recreational areas as afforded by the specific plan, the applicant shall provide an in-depth traffic study to address potential traffic impacts of each use at its ultimate location and to recommend further mitigation measures if needed at such time when the application to develop such uses is filed and the final locations are determined. So there is the ability to have additional traffic analysis and mitigation as it's listed in the conditions for approval.
And I think we're doing everything we can, and I want to say I'm very grateful for what we are doing, but my concern is when this parcel gets handed over to the school, we lose all control. And that's the concern, but I don't know what we can actually do to make a difference with that.
Planning staff and public works staff have discussed meeting with the school district, and that's something that we can do, but it hasn't been done yet, so.
Thank you.
I know what you're saying, but it seems like good hands to give it to, a school district. Presumably, they'd be interested in the safety and well-being of the children also, in the absence of any other opportunity. Okay. Anything else?
No, that was all.
Commissioner Lowe? Okay. Any questions for staff or Brian?
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any other members from the public wish to speak? If not, public comment is closed. Back to the commission. Again, the recommendation from staff for a motion is on page 4. The maker of the motion might consider adding with modifications to condition 11 as suggested by staff, and then inclusion of a signature of the applicant evidencing their acceptance of the conditions of approval imposed by the Planning Commission.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion then
Okay.
that we approve TSM 13-89 with the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval. And then I will, with the change to condition number 11 and the addition of the signature on, was it on the map, Barbara? I'm sorry.
It's addition of the new condition of approval as read into the record.
As read into the record. All right.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Culler. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Brian, Frank, Michael, for your hard work. Next agenda item is 8. Owner applicant, County of San Benito, Bechtel AT&T. Location 1221 Memorial. This is Byron Turner.
I think we had item 7.
7.
Did I skip? Did I say 8? I'm sorry. 7.
Skipping my
I
project.
did, yeah, sorry, Michael.
That's all right. Okay. Michael Krause, Associate Planner, presenting use permit 1082-13, Scenic Corridor Review 13-72, Crown Castle. The applicant proposes to extend the height of an existing stealth design cell tower from a height of approximately 54 feet to a height of approximately 69 feet. As described by the applicant, the height increase would allow for the installation of 2 antennas, 4 new conduit lines, and associated telecommunications equipment. This project has been determined to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act per Section 13303D. This categorical exemption allows for utility extensions, including improvements and modifications. Based upon the applicant's submitted materials, including visual representations, staff has determined that the proposed modification to the wireless communication facility in existence would be significantly in line with the intent of the wireless communication ordinance, zoning district ordinance, scenic corridor ordinance, and the original use permit 818-00. Now, the applicant did request a change to a condition, and staff is okay with that. And that is condition number 9. The change would read, the existing 7-foot-high wood fence that encloses the equipment cabinets and the base of the monopole, flagpole, shall be maintained at all times. Any portion of the fence that becomes broken, damaged, shall be repaired or replaced immediately. And with that, I will give my recommendation. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission make the required CEQA use permit scenic corridor findings listed within the staff report, approve use permit 1082-13 with the conditions of approval listed in the staff report and modifications made by staff, and approve scenic corridor review 13-72 with conditions of approval listed within the staff report. And staff is available for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Culler.
So, Michael, the clarification on that condition of approval, you're basically saying that an existing fence will stay instead of a new fence will be erected?
I'm sorry, did you say an existing fence would be removed and a new one erected?
No, I thought you said an existing fence will be used and maintained.
Yes, correct. That is correct.
And the way that it reads in the staff report is they're going to erect a new fence. So you're saying
Correct. That's a standard condition of approval, and the applicant wanted it to be a little clearer, which is definitely amenable by staff.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Michael? Any members of the public? Sir.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Page with Crown Castle. Excuse me. We're the owners of the tower and the applicant for the project. The first thing I'd like to do is thank Michael for all of his help throughout this process. He's been very helpful. We did have a couple of comments about the conditions and the, for example, number 8. We don't propose any lighting. All the lighting's existing. So this Michael's explained it's a standard condition, but we're not really proposing any lighting, so that's not of a big consequence. However, we would like item number 16 to be revised. So 16 is so broad, it doesn't really bear meaning. I don't know what ordinance 822 or 823 is, and I don't know how to comply with all those codes. So what we would request is that we be compelled to comply with all of the requirements applicable to the building permit that we will apply for if passed through planning. This just seems extremely broad, and I don't know how to respond to it.
Well, it is broad, but it's been, I believe it's a condition that's requested. And it's placed on all the, placed on many projects that come before the Planning Commission. It basically would be applying to those fire code standards that apply to the project, and you'd have to comply with the fire code anyway. It just ties it as a condition of approval to the project. So if there's a problem with it, then the condition of approval, you know, can be brought before the Planning Commission as a way to address the lack of compliance.
Okay.
So, you know, I believe that staff would just request that it be approved as is, but
Okay.
I'm open if the Planning Commission wants us to address it further.
Okay.
I could speak on it. The ordinances that are referenced and the fire code that's referenced, that encompasses not just the state fire requirements, but also our local county ordinances. I don't necessarily think staff would have an issue revising the condition to say something to the effect of the applicant must comply with all local and state fire requirements in place at the time of application of building permit, something to that effect.
Well, it sounds to me like the applicant just needs clarification on how this pertains to his project.
If I may, no, what I'm stating is it's too broad. When you make a statement this broad, it doesn't have meaning. When you say you have to comply with the latest edition of the 2010 California Fire Code, what section of the fire code? When it says the San Benito County Ordinances 822 and 823, Public Resources Code 4290, 4291, I don't know what any of that means. It's not attached to the conditions. So I understand what it is. It's a broad coverage language, And I'm just asking that it be a little more specific. So when we go for a building permit, I am compelled to comply with all of the permitting requirements to gain that building permit. And I believe that would be more appropriate language than everything in this paragraph.
Well, even if you change the code to saying that you must comply with all state, federal...
I'm not
state-
asking for a code change.
No.
What
I
I'm
meant-
saying is this language is too broad.
But even if the language was changed to say that you must comply with all state and local codes pertaining to fire safety and fire codes, it's still going to be very broad.
In all applicable codes in obtaining a building permit. I think that would be more appropriate to what I would have to follow in obtaining a building permit anyway. You know, this is not a large issue. We can certainly live with this, but I think you can agree when you say everything, it really lacks meaning because nobody can comply with everything.
Okay.
So.
If I may make a suggestion, we can add the word, the project shall meet all applicable standards set forth and leave the rest of the condition as is. If it's a concern of applicability to the project, we can add that.
Okay. Okay, all applicable standard. Any other public comments, sir?
It means the same thing regardless.
My name is Angel Curiel. I've been a resident of Hollister for 37 years. My concern is with the high output radio frequency waves that already occur in Hollister. I look to the work of Dr. Nick Begich, Dr. Ross Abbey, Dr. Lee Bowman, Dr. Nick Begich, and the effects of the alpha waves that are currently in the ionosphere and the effects of the frontal lobe it has on children and seniors. And I urge the committee to look into this a bit more before we approve this project. Also, there was no mention of the low-income housing that's supposed to be part of this project, and suggest maybe we look at maybe installing antennas in a different place, maybe Crow Hollow or Ridgemart. That's pretty much all. Thank you. I urge the committee to look into it.
Thank you.
Pardon me, before you go, could you please fill out a speaker code and that's me before you go?
Sure.
Where are we?
Back desk.
That.
There should be, I think.
Any other public comments? Public comments closed to the commission. This is pretty stealth. I didn't even know that was a cell tower before.
I know, I
I've
did not
driven by
either.
that a million times.
Right.
I didn't know flagpoles were within our arsenal. We've seen a lot of trees and even windmills and water tanks, but this is the new one. So the net difference, Michael, is what, 30 feet?
Yes.
8 feet.
There is a height increase. There won't be any, from what I understand, it's going to be, scope of work, installation of a new 30-inch by 35,
30-inch.
yeah, 30-inch by 35-foot flagpole body. Yeah. So it'd be about 35 feet.
Looks like 15 feet. 15 feet increase?
Yeah.
Any other planning commissioner comments? No? Is there a proposed motion?
Sure. Oh, yes.
May I make one clarification that the applicant, I'm sorry, the total increase in the tower is 15 feet.
Correct.
The 30-foot is the addition of the stealth covering from the proposed top of the extension back down onto the tower. So the net increase in
I'll
height
repeat it.
is 15 feet.
Okay, so the applicant speaking from the audience that the net increase in height of the tower will be 15 feet, but the stealth covering actually will be 30 feet. So just a point of clarification. Thank you. Okay, is there a motion from the commission on this agenda item?
Mr. Chair, I move that we make the CEQA findings, I'm having trouble reading this here. Make the CEQA use permit scenic corridor findings listed in the staff report. Approve use permit 1082-13 with approval, with conditions of approval listed. Approve scenic corridor review 1372 with conditions of approval listed within the staff report. Are there any modifications? I don't think so.
As amended.
As amended,
Yeah, he wanted the project shall meet all applicable standards
Oh,
on that,
and
on that
with
number
the-
16.
yeah. And add the word all applicable to that.
to number 16, and number 9 as read into the record with the change that was requested by applicant to condition of approval number 9.
And for clarification, I just wanted to read that 16, the project shall meet all applicable standards set forth, so on and so on.
Right, yeah, that's what Commissioner Culler said. And then County Council also indicated that condition 9 is that which has been read into the record, and Commissioner Culler has stated that is his motion. So is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Now we can get to 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is use permit 1081-13. The applicant AT&T is requesting to replace an existing light pole at Veterans Memorial Park with a new 75-foot monopole for the placement of 12 panel antennas that will also function as a light pole at the park. The applicant is leasing a 450 square foot area for the project. The Veterans Park Committee has reviewed and is in favor of the proposed design and the location. Also, according to the lease agreement with the county, space will be provided to the county for emergency services on that pole, and I will put a visual up on the screen for you right now. So this shows the existing light standard, which is near another pole that is similar with lights on it. The visual representation shows as proposed. And you have these also in your packet.
What was it?
He's asking if they need lights. I think everyone, you've got copies in your packet.
Yeah.
Planning staff has reviewed the proposal and finds it is consistent with similar approved projects. Planning staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the project exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15303, and that the Planning Commission approve use permit number 1081-13 with the conditions, with the findings and the conditions of approval found in your staff report. I'm available for questions, and there is a representative from AT&T here for questions.
One question I had is, does the lighting change at all? Or are they better lights, stronger lights? Existing lights? Steve, are you in charge of lights at the park too?
One of my hats that I wear at Vets Park.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Liaison to the Vets Park Commission.
Okay.
Yes, basically the lighting system will be upgraded. There are some old incandescent lights that are up there right now, and they'll be upgraded a little bit to help with that area of illumination for the fields.
So the kids will get better lighting as a result of this?
The kids will get better lighting. Frankly, this field is used primarily by women's leagues. The Hollister Recreation has a women's league of softball that uses it. I'm sorry, this is a large field. This is a men's typical field. The Hollister men's leagues use it. Kids use it on occasion as well, but the night play is primarily concerned with the men.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for staff? Public comment, anyone here?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. My name is Pete Shubin. I am with Sequoia Deployment Services here tonight representing AT&T. We have reviewed the conditions in the staff report and can accept them as proposed in the staff report. I'm here tonight to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? No, no questions. I think it's a creative solution.
Thank
Better
you.
lights for kids and cell antennas. Okay, thank you, sir. If there are no further questions, we appreciate you being here. Any other comments from the public? If not, public comment is closed. To the commission, further comments or deliberations or a proposed motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we find the project exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15303, and that we approve use permit 1081-13 with the findings and conditions in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Better light for kids.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, it passed 4-0?
Yes. I thought we only had to do a roll call vote if there was a no. Do you want roll calls on even unanimous
No.
decisions?
This is, I'm sorry if I didn't enunciate it after each vote. We're supposed to be doing oral announcements now pursuant to the new law that went into effect. So after each vote, we're supposed to announce it orally, the vote now.
Right, but my question was, is that true even with
You don't have to do a roll call as long as you know who voted which way.
Okay, but even when it's unanimous?
Yes, you're
So
supposed to do.
4-0, 5-0. Okay.
Yes.
And would you like me to do that, Barbara?
That'd be okay. Or
Okay.
direct the clerk to do it, either way.
No, I'll be happy to. Okay, next is agenda item 9 from the director, Mr. Turner, regarding the wine tasting on land designated as open space.
This is a discussion item for the commission. Staff received some inquiries regarding whether wine tasting could be conducted on land where there is an existing agricultural use, but it's also designated as open space. In a lot of cases, when we develop PUDs, planned developments, the density is shifted. The overall density of a project is shifted to one corner or one clustered on the site, where an easement is then put over the rest of the property, dedicating it as open space or agricultural open space. In a common condition, and the one that applies here, is the condition of approval is that a permanent agricultural open space easement is hereby granted to the County of San Benito. The easement shall limit future use of the land and will effectively preserve the land as an agricultural open space. The landowners or successors in interest shall not construct or permit the construction of improvements except one dwelling, and those that would not be incompatible with maintaining or preserving the agricultural open space character of the land. So we have that language that obviously means you can't put additional housing on the land, but it also leaves room for agricultural uses such as barns. I guess the question here today is, should the planning department accept an application for a use permit for wine tasting to construct a structure for wine tasting on land that has been designated as agricultural open space? If the planning commission finds that it's an appropriate, that a wine tasting facility would be an appropriate use on land that is considered open space, it has no bearing over whether you approve a future application. It's purposely left ambiguous here. Did not tell you where specifically the land is or who the applicant is, because we'll look at that on its own merits and look at the traffic that's generated. But the question is, the agricultural character and the open space character of the land, which is written into the language in the easement, whether it be appropriate to do this commercial/agricultural use on any specific site.
Okay. So let's for a second just check in on format. When you say it's a discussion item, would you like us just to go through and say what we think about it?
Well,
or do you want us just to...
If the commission feels that the language is clear enough in the easement to say that that type of use would not be appropriate on land that is considered open space, then we would instruct future applicants to not apply for the use permit and let them know it's a prohibited use. If the commission thinks this is something we could look at, then we would accept the use permit application, process it accordingly, and bring it before the planning commission, when it then would be public noticed, and everyone in the cluster would get the notice as well, the neighbors would get the notice, and we would deliberate as with any other project. Well, because it's not specifically listed, there's some language in here that is open to interpretation.
Right. And I'd like to add another wrinkle to this, if I may. Well, first, in the interest of disclosure, as Commissioner Lowe has done, I've spoken with Director Turner about this particular issue because it caught my eye when it came through. And Scott Fuller and I and others worked pretty hard to, and Byron as well, to develop something called a wine overlay zone that was submitted to the Board of Supervisors for consideration in conjunction with the general plan update process. And the thought behind the wine overlay zone is to provide some level of encouragement for vineyards, wineries, tasting rooms, and wine-related type businesses to support those types of efforts in the county, and ecotourism and that kind of thing. So query whether a proposal to do a wine tasting feature in a set-aside, what would otherwise be set aside as open space, but within this wine overlay zone would be different than someone proposing a wine tasting feature in an open space outside of the wine overlay zone. Does that make sense? So, you know, someone wants to do, what's a PUD that we did? Dunville? Did we do a PUD in Dunville with an open space set aside?
Open space, yeah.
So someone wants to do a wine tasting room on the open space set aside at Dunville Corners, hypothetically, but it's nowhere near the wine overlay zone. Would that be treated differently or viewed differently by the Planning Commission than the same type of proposal within the wine overlay zone? Or does that add anything? Again, I just throw that out as something to think about. So why don't we just go through, and since it's a discussion item, you're just looking for thoughts and feedback, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
because we
Commissioner
don't
Levy,
want
what's
to accept an application and then decide that this is, you know, it's sort of a run up the flagpole without too many specifics. That's what we're doing here.
Right.
Mr. Chair, the way I envision this, I'm just going to throw out ideas because this is kind of nebulous as far as I'm concerned. It's like running water. I'm not sure where we're going with it, but you know, my concern would, you know, are we talking about a tent for the day? Are we talking about actually building a building? Will there be parking lots? You know, there's just a lot of questions here.
Mm-hmm.
My first feeling is that if it's permanent open space, that I wouldn't really be enthused about a building and parking lots going up on it, obviously. But I would have certainly less objection to something maybe like bring in a big tent, you know, one of these commercial tents and have some kind of wine tasting event on an open space. I guess I would have much less of a problem with something like that.
So it's a temporary versus permanent
right.
distinction for you. Okay.
Right. And if there is the wine overlay, to me, in that area, it would make more sense than, you know, if we designate areas in the general plan that we say we encourage wine tasting.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like it would be a different use than just any open space in the community.
Okay. Great.
I can agree with her to keep it to where the vineyards or where the wine's actually being produced.
Okay. Commissioner Kohler?
I think it would kind of depend on what was being proposed. You know, if it was a small building that met the character of the area around it, I'd be okay with it. If it was a 45-foot high winery barrel room type thing, that definitely doesn't work for me.
Okay.
You know, even if it is in the wine zone, if it's not, you know, if it's zoned open space, seems like it ought to stay that way.
Okay.
I would probably be a little bit flexible with the, you know, if it was small and hidden. I mean, you know.
Right. I know what you mean. I think the other commissioners have said the way that I feel about it better than I could. If it was in the wine overlay zone, I think it'd be appropriate use, notwithstanding the open space designation. I think it's compatible or consistent with that. But even still, even within a wine overlay zone, as Commissioner Cullors pointed out, if it's just too big and too much and therefore loses its consistency with an open space type of designation, I would take a dim view towards that. So I think that's a pretty articulate response to the question.
I think it gives us some, this will help us guide potential applicants, yes.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Was there any public comment on that one?
I'm sorry. Yeah, any member of the public? Mr. Lee, Mr. Kelly?
And we haven't looked at that issue. I think we'd have to make sure that we'd go back to the prior CEQA that was for the prior approval and check to see whether there was any mitigation measures that pertain to the land.
For the set-aside?
Yeah, and we'd probably also maybe ask the applicant to bring a title search to make sure whether there was recorded easements for open space similar to what I don't know that it would be the same as what we did with Earthbound Farms when we had that open space easement with Earthbound Farms.
Right.
You know, we'd have to check all those issues out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, compliance with CEQA and then also with recorded
It'll be part of the
easements.
application process.
Yeah, you don't want to run afoul of either one of those.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak. I appreciate it.
Sorry to skip you for a second, Matt. It was unintentional.
My name is Matt Kelly, and I'm representing Elizabeth Campisi. She owns the open space property that was dedicated for the Montebello Estates, I believe it's called, on Cienega Road. Cienega is part of our wine trail. And she is interested in a venture of what we're talking about tonight. She's interested in a small building, maybe 5,000 square feet, a small production facility, meaning 10,000 or less cases per year of a high-end wine, but of a low value. Low volume. But coupled with that, wine tasting at the facility. Her son's been in the wine business for over 10 years, and he explained to me that you actually can't have wine tasting on property that isn't zoned commercial unless you also have a production facility on that site, which is very common in our county. You have the winery and then you have the wine tasting at the same place. So that's what we're proposing, and actually it was her son's suggestion that we hide the facility within the vineyard. Actually plan on planting the site with vines and placing the building on the interior of the vineyard to, keep it scaled down, keep it kind of hidden, and instead of some grand, facility like you were kind of opposed to. So we're hoping that we'll be able to bring this forward to you in a relatively short time.
Okay. And I just want to note, as County Council is probably thinking as well, that was for informational purposes only, since this is just a discussion item, Matt,
Right.
as I'm sure you can appreciate. We don't have a specific application in front of us, nor do I think it's appropriate to comment on what you're planning on doing in the future, because the public wasn't noticed for that.
Absolutely,
All right.
yeah. Given the invitation to speak, I just thought I'd
Absolutely. Don't
throw it out there, and
don't pass it up an opportunity.
I'm sure I'm not the only one that's thinking of doing something like this for one of their clients, and just kind of wanted to try and put it into scale for you and hopefully answer some of your concerns.
It's appreciated. Thank you. Any questions for Matt? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your consideration.
You bet. Thanks for coming tonight. Anything else on this discussion item? Byron, no?
No.
Okay,
No.
then turning to the last thing, which is the general plan update.
We had a presentation at the board on Tuesday from EMC, who is the general plan update consultant, and I'm going to let you know what our future calendar is, and hopefully you can accommodate it. On March 4th, we're going to be going back to the board to have them make a policy decision on whether to open up the general plan to new requests, or to requests that have already happened. For 4 or 5 years now, we've had members of the public come in and want to know how they can get involved in the general plan, how they could possibly take advantage of specific locations, and they'd like to see certain sites zoned or designated differently. And we've collected these requests. We let the GPAC, the advisory committee, know that we have these requests, and they directed that they not act on them or look at them, but it be something that goes to the Planning Commission. Well, as you know, we never really made it to the Planning Commission as part of the last process. So the question is then for the board is, do they want to open this up and filter through all these potential new designations or new suggestions for the general plan, or does the board want to shut the door and say, listen, we've got every request that is on the books that have been made in public, that is the extent of any request that the board and planning commission are going to consider. So that's the item that's going to be discussed on March 4th. Depending on what the board decides, either they open it up for new suggestions, and you'll have people coming to the podium saying, I think this property should be designated this. You're going to get that anyway, but they're going to try to let people know that either yes, we're going to consider them, or no, we're not going to consider them. In the interest of time, this has been going on for a while now. Let's just get you can always make a general plan amendment. You can make a general plan amendment now. You can make a general plan amendment after the general plan's been approved. So they're going to make that decision on March 4th. On March 19th, which is the Planning Commission time, date at 6 p.m., we are going to have the board here and hold it as a joint meeting between the board and the Planning Commission. That would be at your regular meeting in March. I believe it's the 19th. And that is intended to be with the consultant to go through the general plan and policy by policy as far as the changes go and discuss them in open session for a few hours. And the intent of that meeting will be to walk away with, this is our general plan. This is what we are going to now evaluate with the environmental document. Now, the way that meeting is going to be structured depends a lot on the decision the board makes on the 4th, because if they make the decision on the 4th that we're going to be looking at new properties and people who want to, say, be designated as a new community study area, then that's going to happen at the meeting of the 19th as well. If they say, no, we're going to shut the door, we're done discussing specific properties, we're going to just simply look at policies, then that's what we'll be doing on the meeting of the 19th. Okay. So I am holding that meeting as only general plan items, and so I would request that if your calendars accommodate, we can have a special Planning Commission meeting on April 4th, which would be 2 weeks afterwards, because we'll have no. Right. I don't want to have projects and public hearings at the same time. A specific project at the same time that we're having an in-depth general plan workshop. We'll be providing you with a lot of information, a lot of policy amendments that have been requested by the public at this point for the commission to review and the board to review. And again, we'll go through them policy by policy, make the changes up on the screen in front so everyone sees what changes are being made, and then lock it in. This is our general plan, and then commence the environmental review. So I guess I'm just letting you know, I hope you're available on March 19th for that meeting, and that we would like you to schedule a April 4th special meeting of the Planning Commission for the projects that are going to get bumped from the 19th.
April 4th is a Friday.
Do I got the wrong?
9th, the 2nd Wednesday?
Let's look at the calendar. What do you, I want to say it's the first Wednesday, 2 weeks after the 19th.
The 2nd?
April 2nd. Okay, April 2nd. Sorry about that.
And then are we going to have two Planning Commission meetings in April then?
I would have two Planning
Commission. The 2nd and the 16th?
Yes.
Okay.
But there are items that I don't want to wait till the 16th.
Right. Because that time's going to be used up for general plan. Okay, so to the commission, is the 2nd work? Commissioner Lowe? Is that fine? Mr. Rodriguez? Yeah. Jeff? Yes?
I need to look at my calendar. I don't know.
Okay. It looks like tentatively that's fine.
Okay.
For the 2nd. So 6 p.m. here?
Yes.
Okay. And then also on the 16th. Okay, any questions for staff regarding the general plan? If there are not...
Was there anybody that wanted to speak on the general plan?
Ann? Matt? If there's no public comment on the general plan meetings coming up, then public comments closed. No further planning commission comments. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Second? Oh,